This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. If you are a shot caller, I am sure that you are wanting to be a boss on this show. We have got a jam-packed show, and clearly the main topic of conversation has got to be trade heard from around the world. That's right. Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Buckets, is moving on. We will talk about this, but then we also have another great guest on board. So let's go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holler back at me, Mr. Shaw. Don't you love how the NBA just be jacking up your plans?
Man, it's a gift that keeps on giving. I always say that, man. But as always, salute to all the fans, listeners. NBA Baseline, amazing, as you said, jam-packed show. Jimmy Butler finally on the move. We got much to discuss when it comes to that, and a great, amazing guest as well joining us in the drop.
Definitely. From the National Basketball Retired Players Association, we have the president and CEO, Scott Rochelle. He's going to be on board with us to talk about the association, their efforts, and the collaboration and partnerships that he has with the NBA. And listen, the main topic is going to be about the Jimmy Butler trade. So we'd love for you guys to hang with us. This is going to be a jam-packed show, as we have said already. Be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. We're available on all the major platforms. You know where we are. You know where to find us. Be sure to download that platform, plug in, allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things, including the crazy trade that is now that we're about to dig into. So once again, man, each and everybody, you know how to catch us, especially on Dash Radio. Tuesdays, your morning drive to get you live and ready for the upcoming week of the NBA. So be sure to catch our show on Tuesday mornings. You know how we do. You know how we roll. Let's talk Jimmy Butler here on The Breakdown.
Time to break it
down to the bone gristle.
Time now for The Breakdown. Callie Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for The Breakdown, it's all about Jimmy Buckets, man. He yelled, he griped, he sniped, and finally the Minnesota Timberwolves acquiesced the decision to move him. And he is being moved to the Philadelphia 76ers. If your weekend hadn't already been rocked like the cradle over the news, then there's something wrong with you. But basically, the Philadelphia 76ers made sure that in order to get Jimmy Buckets, they're going to have to give up a couple of players. They gave up Robert Covington, Dario Saric, guard Jared Bayless, and their 2022 second-round pick, according to sources. I'm going to actually just open up the floor to you, Shaw, because I'm sure that you have much to say about this particular trade. And look, the sentiment is that this could probably be a win-win, but I have a feeling that you may have a different perspective from it.
Well, I think that's just the saga is finally over. That's the main thing that we want to get into, right? Like, it's done. It had to happen, and now it's happened. Thibs, despite himself, kind of had to give in, and maybe he didn't, because some other reports are saying that Glenn Taylor basically made the deal without Thibs' knowledge. But at the end of the day, Butler's doing interviews after games with, the pre-described rest as he needed to, his sore body, so to speak. All that stuff was just circling and permeating around Minnesota, and it just wasn't working. Under 500, 4 or 5 games under 500, and a team that just, it just wasn't going to work. Now, as a result, it seems like after that Sacramento game where they, get dispatched by a pretty good Kings team nonetheless, but it's still the Kings, I think, in a lot of people's minds. They were like, all right, that's it. You're going to be sitting out every other game. We're not winning with you. Cat's not really playing up to his level of potential. We got to get a deal done. And you wonder if they did it in a little bit of haste, only because you feel like, well, maybe Miami could have came back to the table and offered to Josh Richardson. Houston, who is struggling mightily, I'm sure would have liked to get into that. But it seems like Glenn Taylor just said, hey, let me call up Philadelphia, call up the owner there, see what's good, and see what I can get done. And in return, they get back Robert Covington, Dario Saric. Covington kind of fits Thibs' mold, as especially as a 3-and-D type of guy. Don't really know what Saric's role is going to be yet in Minnesota. But at the end of the day, the saga is done, and now Philadelphia has to deal with the drama queen, you could probably say, that is Jimmy Butler.
I don't believe that the saga is done. I mean, you can say that maybe a chapter has ended in Minnesota, a very short-lived chapter for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And there's an interesting article on ESPN that headlines the title, Tom Tibbs gambled on Jimmy Butler, on the deal to get Jimmy Butler, and he lost, which to me spells an indictment on Tom Thibodeau's acumen as an executive or playing in the executive role of the NBA. And we often talk about how sometimes we tend to graduate people just because they have this window of showing a level of greatness. Tom Thibodeau's ability to be a heady defensive assistant coach, a heady D coach, or defensive oriented coach cannot be questioned. I have said, though, numerous times that I have questioned his ability to be a head coach, and I can certainly now say without hesitance that I really question his ability and his clout as someone in the executive aspects of an organization, specifically here with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Because if, to your point, Shaw, what you're talking about, the situation that just led to this point of them moving on getting rid of Butler, really without the say so or the nod or the wink wink with Tibbs or anything from Tibbs, injecting into this part of the conversation, I think speaks volumes about where his weight really sits. And we're going to come right back to this whole thing. Now that they feel like they've gotten rid of part of the problem, is this going to cure the ills of a basketball team which, look, you could have said when you brought Jimmy Butler into this team automatically should be considered as a playoff team. I think I think we gave them high expectations because of it, because we thought that Jimmy Butler can mask part of that. But I really do believe that now you got rid of Jimmy Butler, you're starting back from scratch. You're starting at ground zero. And I think it comes right back to the Andrew Wiggins factor. Does Andrew Wiggins step up and play as Cat Williams' teammate, rather than the whole dynamic of that's Jimmy Butler's team, or was it Cat Williams, or Big Cat's
Cat
team?
Williams.
I'm sorry, Cat Williams. Well,
you calling Karl Anthony Towns a comedian right now?
I'm just saying, I had a don't worry, I'll wait moment with the Minnesota Timberwolves and trading Jimmy Butler. Right, we all sitting here on pins and needles waiting for this thing to go down. You knew it needed to happen, but all I'm just saying is bottom line, I don't think that the Jimmy Butler trade is really doing anything more for the Minnesota Timberwolves, as I think now it should highlight more about what the Philadelphia 76ers are saying by doing this deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can understand the sentiment in that specifically now, because a lot of it is, I was able to listen to NBA radio today, and Amin Hassan was saying something about, all right, well, are Towns and Wiggins the kind of dudes now that is like, all right, well, now you're gone, cool, and now I'm going to show you that, that we really are dope at the end of the day. I think that's a great point because he then went on to say, because the two of them have both gotten their money and they basically ran the guy who called them out of town. Like the organization chose the two of them, right? Mm-hmm. So Towns and Wiggins are probably both like, all right, well, you're gone. You said what you had to say. We both got our money. We're both putting up decent numbers. You can, maybe say maybe not so much in the case of Wiggins. But then if Tibbs is the one who ends up getting fired as a result of this, well, then where's the lesson? And we won't know if those two guys collectively will ever reach the talent that they're supposed to have and whether or not they care enough to do so. That still remains to be seen. And that's a very big question that's going to get answered through the better portion of the season now with, 68, 70 games left to play, right? I think that's what we have to be focusing on. We just don't know yet. But if they just kind of sit back, don't get into the playoffs, and everyone will say, hey, well, Jimmy was right. Jimmy was an asshole, but Jimmy was right. And that is, I think, the biggest question that Minnesota Timberwolves need to answer right now.
Yeah, but you can also make the argument, hey, we see a resurgence of Derrick Rose helping this basketball team. We don't know what they're going to get with Jeff Teague. And look, I think you can make an argument. I think you believe more in the fact that Tibbs believes more in Robert Covington. I think that this is a great opportunity for Dario Saric. And I personally believe, I think Dario Saric might be a better player playing next to Karl Anthony Towns than I think he ever would have gotten playing with the Philadelphia 76ers. I think the Philadelphia 76ers have squandered an opportunity of a guy like Saric numerous times. And sometimes you just got to move a dude because the commodity seems high because he is a quality player. He just needs to play on a different team and have a different role, be able to provide something. Now, I will say this though, also having Covington, I think helps that basketball team because Covington is a solid defender. And if you're going to give up a guy like Jimmy Butler, a team that already suffers from not playing quality defense, you at least have somebody who I think collectively can help those guys play better defense or at least mask some of the deficiencies that the Minnesota Timberwolves reflect defensively. And again, these are young players. I think these are guys that can fall in line up the food chain of the respect level that I think Tom Thibodeau commands. Now, maybe somewhere along the line, he lost that with Jimmy Butler when he was a Chicago Bull, but I definitely think that this is a better team that is well suited to play better together than I think that they ever would have had, even if Jimmy Butler didn't, start all the antics that he started over the course of this offseason.
Well, I think it's definitely one way to look at it for sure. I think Butler in his right mindset with that team in the right mindset is a better overall talented team, but you can't argue now that it didn't work. So now the fit has to come into play. The issue that we have with Sarge, more or less, is will Thibs now fall out of love with Taj Gibson? Will he give Sarge the requisite minutes that are needed for him to produce? Or does he say, well, Taj is my guy, Taj is going to rebound, Taj is going to defend, and then now Sarek is really kind of struggling for those minutes. He can probably play some backup five if necessary.
I'm already ready to sabotage Taj Gibson's.
That's you, though. That's you. I mean, if he's bringing back Luol Deng, even if it's just to ride the bench, that just shows a severe loyalty to his guys and maybe to a fault. And again, I don't dislike Taj Gibson, but I think Sarge obviously is the future. That can't also be disputed. But Gibson does play better defense and it is a little bit more physical than Sarge is at this stage of his career. So that is going to be the biggest factor. And if what we said in the beginning is really true, where Glenn Taylor really kind of made this deal outside of Thibs, well, Thibs is just going to be like, all right, well, now I got Sarge. All right, now how do I play him? Because it's going to impact my guy Taj here. I think Covington is going to be a plug and play. One way you look at it, he's going to start at the 2. He could start at the 3. He can even play some small ball 4 if you wanted him to. Don't really know what's going to happen with Derrick Rose. Does he continue to start in that lineup? But Wiggins and Towns seem to be the only guys who are absolutely safe and going to be starting no matter what. The rest of his lineup is going to have to kind of acquiesce and figure it out. But that's going to be Thibs' job, and he has going to have to relinquish some of his previous feelings, really more or less, to put it bluntly, his previous feelings about some of his players, so that this team can potentially progress.
Look, I want us to get to the Philadelphia 76ers side real quick, but I will throw out this final thought. If Tom Thibodeau's misses on Dario Saric, and I'm not saying that Dario Saric is the end all be all of why he should no longer be the head coach for Minnesota Timberwolves. But what I say is that having a player like Dario Saric, whom a lot of people have already talked about as a quality basketball player and can do good things for, if Tom Thibodeau cannot figure out a way to bring out the best of Dario Saric, then it's clearly the coaching of Tom Thibodeau. It's clearly something in the way that he handles his personnel and in the way that he handles some of these players that is just not clicking, that we're going to see success from these guys. Look, we're probably not going to see that until maybe a year into like after this season and maybe somewhere going into the point of the next season, barring that there's no drama. But if Dario Saric doesn't somehow fit in the fold of where the Minnesota Timberwolves, and you look at this roster, this is a pretty good roster. I don't know if they're good enough that they're going to be able to compete with the rest of the other teams in the Northwest Division. But if you have some pretty good players and you cannot figure out to get these guys the ball the same way that Brett Brown got the ball to Dario Saric, or with that Philadelphia 76ers lineup, they're going to start looking at Tom Thibodeau and they're going to be saying, yeah, we want your defense, but we certainly don't want you coaching this basketball team. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA as we are getting into the breakdown regarding the big trade. Jimmy Butler moved from Minnesota over to the Philadelphia 76ers. And speaking of the Philadelphia 76ers, Shaw, it's not like we didn't think that we didn't see this coming. We just felt like maybe if the Philadelphia 76ers got their head out of their own behind and handle their business and stop thinking that they were going to try to get LeBron James, maybe they would have been able to shake down the Minnesota Timberwolves and get Jimmy Butler at a lesser price. But do you think that the Philadelphia 76ers are a better team having Jimmy B?
Yeah, I think on paper you have to say yes, without a doubt. It's just the extra that you don't know what's going to come into play. Markelle Fultz did not go in that deal, right? So Now here comes Butler with his tough love approach. And, does he get on Fultz's nerves and say, hey, well, this kid has the talent, but he's basically Andrew Wiggins 2.0 at some point? We don't know. And then does Philadelphia keep him long term? But that's down the line. What they are right now is a team that has another scorer, another defender, and another guy who can play make and take some pressure off of Simmons and Embiid collectively. You do wonder. The only thing I really wondered even aloud is, does Simmons now truly regress in terms of even trying to take shots because Butler's there as the clear second best option offensively? Does he just say, you know what, I can score 6 points tonight and it's not a big deal? And does he just back away from that responsibility? But overall, the lineup is going to shift a little bit. Simmons will still be the de facto point guard. Redick probably enters the starting lineup. Now you have to wonder who ends up now kind of being that starting power forward, or do they make Simmons the quote unquote the power forward and start Fultz and Redick in some combination one way or another? You wonder if there's enough shooting out there if they end up doing that. I think Philadelphia is not done. Although we all hearing the conversations about a potential Kyle Korver move, maybe getting him from Cleveland. But I think they're also going to be very active come the buyout market, although that's 3-4 months away. Philadelphia right now is a better team, and I really do feel if they do not at least make the conference finals, this would have been a complete bust for them.
Look, Jimmy Butler is certainly going to make them a better basketball team. In comparison to the rest of the other teams in the Eastern Conference, it's not going to catapult them. Jimmy Butler does not shoot the basketball well enough to compensate the deficiencies that's already been exposed about this Philadelphia 76ers team. It's a reason why the 76ers right now are only 2 games above, 500, but it's early in the season. But there's already clear signs that if Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons do not shoot the basketball, guess who will? Right? You already relegated JJ Redick to the bench, and basically Joel Embiid is your best shooter, right? Like your center is your best shooter, basically, which it's saying so much. So who knows where this is going to go? Clearly, the ball is going to be in Jimmy Butler's hands. It's just going to be interesting to see how Simmons and Butler play off of each other. I'm not so much worried about Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler because really Jimmy Butler's got nothing to say about Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid may joke around, may play around, but Joel Embiid brings it, and he brings it on both ends of the court. And you can make the argument right now that if not Joel Embiid playing at an MVP kind of level, this basketball team would be below 500. So it's really going to be, it's going to be imperative to see how well Jimmy Butler elevates Ben Simmons's playmaking ability or play creating ability. Because if Jimmy Butler is not shooting the basketball well, I mean, all you've done is you've actually diminished the Philadelphia 76ers by releasing your 2 better shooters in Covington and Saric for a guy who's just going to come in there and just yell at the young dudes, but have no accountability for what he doesn't do, which is show up, in clutch game situations. And more importantly, he is a person that tends to hold the ball. His ball usage is pretty high, and he's going to have to respect the fact that Ben Simmons needs the basketball to get it to his guys to make plays for him.
Well, no doubt. And that's why we say that there's a good, strong possibility that they're not done. They're going to recognize that they need to add some shooting to this team one way or another. And I don't think they'll do anything crazy, I think, with Fultz or something like that. But Redick is probably going into, I think, or they've already said it, is going to be a starter now with Sarge and Covington gone. Like, they realize they need to put his 17 points per game and 35% 3-point shooting this year into the starting lineup. He's playing starters minutes anyway, so it's fine. They just got to get that done. But what else can they do? Who else can they potentially add to kind of help this? But I am very interested to see what the fit is alongside Butler, Simmons, and Embiid, how they just play together. Is the chemistry going to be immediate? How much time does it take to develop? And, with Embiid and Butler, both being kind of trolls in some ways too, some of the drama that comes out of that, do they end up getting along, in this kind of like this buddy comedy, so to speak, that could be the 76ers, or do they butt heads in a way that, we haven't even seen before? Because because Embiid is going out there and producing at the level he's producing, he is playing better than Cat. I don't know that he's overall better than Cat, but I think right now he's definitely playing that way for sure, and especially because he does so on both sides of the basketball. Towns does not play the defense that Embiid does. So Butler should like that. I tweeted out exactly that. Simmons and Embiid, in terms of their collective talent and their collective desire to win, are already light years ahead of Towns and Wiggins, and that alone should impress Butler can he now be that third piece to push Philadelphia over the edge in the Eastern Conference?
All right, real quick, Shaw. What do you think? What do you think it's going to take in order for Butler to re-sign with the Philadelphia 76ers? Where do the Philadelphia 76ers need to be for Butler to buy into the idea that he wants to re-sign, or do you even think that he's willing to re-sign?
I don't think they make the move unless they had some, conversation that it's a potential, and or more or less even a strong possibility. Philadelphia, because of the trust in the process, they're also in great financial shape. They could re-sign Butler next summer and then still potentially add another max deal, which is insane to me because Simmons is not on is still on his rookie deal right now. So if Butler could actually get another star there and maybe they go out and get a real point guard, quote unquote. I think I'd put the chances at better than 50-50 right now. I'd probably say maybe 60-40 that he's probably willing to resign. But I think they're going to need to stay healthy, number one, and then at least reach the Eastern Conference Finals. If they get embarrassed like in the second round or something like that, and I don't know if you feel like they were embarrassed last year, but they got beat by Boston, right? If they lose in the second round to a Boston or Toronto or somebody like that, or even in Milwaukee, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be enough because Butler, he realizes that he's starting to enter the prime side of his career, and he's going to want to be able to win championships kind of immediately, or at least get there.
All right. Well, they say, the Butler did it, and it's done. Jimmy Butler moving on to the Philadelphia 76ers, the Minnesota Timberwolves moving on without Jimmy Buckets. You're tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was the breakdown. Time now for the drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And this week on the drop, we have a special guest on board with us to talk about an entity which I don't think too many people who do follow the NBA, whether you're passionate as a fan, whether you play the game, listen, the legends that have walked through all the Herald arenas, who have given us the game that we have loved to watch on all of the mediums. It's great when there is an actual chapter, a brotherhood that extends beyond their NBA career. And this faction has been a part of the NBA since 1992. NBA legends Dave DeBusschere, Dave Bing, Archie Clark, Dave Cohens, and Oscar Robinson. And we all know about the Big O. These guys played a critical part in the founding of the National Basketball Retired Players Association, aka the NBPRA. And with us is the president and CEO of the NBPRA, Scott Rochelle. Scott, thank you so much for hopping on board with us to kick the logistics of an entity that many people now, I think, are starting to embrace passionately, not the players, but the association and all that it does right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I really love speaking on this subject, talking a little bit more about what we do, who we are, and how we're impacting the community at large. So, no, thank you for having me here and looking forward to the conversation.
No, definitely. So first things first, Scott, you clearly do not sound like a Julius Erving, an Oscar Robinson, you know what I'm saying, an Iceman Gervin. You sound a little young, man. So I'm sure that the first thing people are going to be talking about is how is this young buck, like, running a legendary foundation, a legendary, cornerstone piece that elevates and illuminates not just the legends of the game, but also is a critical part in it's an extension for those that have gone on throughout all facets of basketball. How did you get a part of this, and what led you to your desire to now run this association?
Well, I'll tell you the age factor is very interesting. I'm 38 years old, and so when you look at the association, and you're right, our average age of players, can be it ranges in the 60s, and we've got players who are older, the legends of the game, the guys who really established it. They're a very crucial part of who we are and what we do. But you also have to remember that in order to have vitality and to be in an association that really represents the entire universe of players, you have to engage the younger players as well. So when I'm coming in as CEO, I'm coming from a viewpoint of how do we make sure that the players coming out today, the players who are my age, the players who are coming out with not all the same problems of the guys of the past, but a different outlook, resources, energy, different interests and things, how do we make sure that we are the association that serves them as well? It's a very diverse group. You talk about guys from age 25 to literally 95. How do you attack that? And I think we've done a very good job in the past of really catering to the older players and making sure that their legacy is intact. But then on the other end, how do you make sure that the younger players come in and see this as an association that is attractive to them? So, for my age, I believe that I'm in a good I'm in a good position to know what the younger players are looking for. To take the temperature of someone who's not yet 40, who's looking to get the most out of life and see what there is for people in this age range. So I guess there are people who may question the age thing, but I think it is very important, especially at this point in our 26th year, and when we want to try and find a way to make the next 25 years very valuable to us.
Well, I want to go ahead and congratulate you because I know you were recently appointed to that position. I think you kind of moved your way up. Is that correct? You were appointed to this position sometime in March, right?
Right, right. So I've been with the association since 2011. Started off as the outside legal counsel and was doing the contract work, board governance, all the things that legal counsel would handle for a corporate entity. And about 2 years in, I joined full time. It saved a lot on legal fees, but also gave me an opportunity to really expand and see other aspects of the association, working in programming, membership, and chapter development. That was the first job I had here. I was
So,
literally overseeing everything player related, but not being a former professional player. I kind of transitioned out of that and went more into programming and partnerships, and we were able to allow Kenny Gaddison to come in and run the player side of things for us, which was very good for us because Kenny had been obviously a long time player, but he also been coaching as well. So I moved out of that and moved into partnerships, and then around the 5 6 year mark, the CEO who was here at the time decided he wanted to go back home to New Orleans, and so it gave me opportunity. And because I had been here, because I had been doing a lot of the work, I think the momentum and the I don't want to say the fear, but I would say the interest in keeping the continuity gave me a leg up in the search
yeah.
process.
Yeah, and that definitely makes a lot of sense, especially of an organization of this ilk that needs to be, have that continuity that is proud. And I think, we're even going back to your age a little bit, so to speak. You're right. You're in a perfect middle ground where you can kind of relate, to the younger guys, quote unquote, and then,
Right.
maybe some of the older heads as well too. So for our fans and listeners, right? So explain this, to them and even to us here on the show. What's the difference between you guys and NBAPA? Obviously, that's for people who are playing. But
Right.
after you've done playing, do you get an automatic kind of induction? Do you have to join? Are there fees involved with after you've become a retired player? How does that kind of work on that end for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are not a union by organization. We are not 501c3 membership, not for profit. So if you play the game, if you've been on an active roster for at least one game, you're a member. You can become a general member. But there are tiers to the membership. There's a annual membership fee if you want to take a part of All Star Weekend or a summer conference that is in line with the summer league, or our scholarship grant programs, different things that we do. And then there's a lifetime membership for those they want to pay a one-time fee, get out of the way, and have benefits for life.
Scott Rochelle joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. He is president and CEO of the NBRPA. Scott, I want to follow up a little bit on the part of the entity being a nonprofit organization.
Right.
Listen, most people kind of get it twisted when we talk about nonprofit organizations and what the intentions are. Um, you know, there's obviously a mission, and then there is a focus that has to be attained in order to obviously maintain that particular part of the status. But I think also that comes with this is the idea that players that obviously enter this association is also with the intent to give back. What do you feel like as the president and what you have seen? What is it that you feel most passionate about that you have seen from the players that are giving to the association, other than their membership fees, that has been a benefit for this organization so far during your tenure?
I'll tell you the most impressive thing I see is our community work through our full court press program. When the players have an opportunity to get out and do a youth clinic program, go back to especially their community. We like to use local players in their own communities to go back and teach kids basketball as well as life skills, to share their story, to share their ups and downs, but to give that insight to kids who normally wouldn't have the opportunity to be that close to an NBA player, who probably never been inside an NBA stadium. That's special. And when we put the opportunity out there, the players jump to it. They really get involved, and it's magical because the players are good. They're really, really good at the basketball aspect, but they're great when it comes to actually relating to the kids and telling the story and giving them the nuggets of information that they probably didn't get when they were coming up, but they wish they had. And to see the players come in early and stay late for those types of events has really been tremendous to us. So when you talk about a mission, we have a dual mission. We help players in their transition, but we also help the communities at large, our communities, give them back to
So
those. Go
So
ahead.
sorry, and sorry to interrupt, but I kind of even with along those same lines in some regard, right? So I want to take it back to a little bit. Does the Players Association itself even have some kind of after you've retired type programs and coordination? And how do you guys maybe even work together with maybe some of those efforts?
Yeah, the NBPA has launched the Off the Court initiative, which really targets players 1 to 5 years out, which is important because that 1 to 5 year period is really crucial to a player's transition, because when things go wrong, they go wrong in that time period. The transition means a lack and loss of identity. If someone's played basketball their entire life and now they're no longer that player, they have to ask themselves, who am I now? What
Mhm.
do I do? Why am I here? And so through that process, with the PA being involved in it as well as us, we're working together to create a seamless transition so that players who come out of the game know what resources are available, know how to use those resources, and actually do take advantage of those resources. So the PA's off the court program is being formulated right now, and we're in communication with the PA on how we take our programming and and work with their team to make sure that from 1 to 5 years we both have them. We both have the players in our grasp, communicating with them. And once the guys after 5 years, they're passed along to us, and we're able to take
Mhm.
them for the rest of the way. And so as you said earlier, retired players are in vogue right now. People are talking about retired players. People are talking about the services for them, whether it be basketball or football, good or bad. The conversation is happening, which is great for us because it brings that attention that we need so that people can take it very seriously. If someone walks away from the game of basketball at the age of 32 and they're technically retired, they've got a lot of living left to do. And when you come through high school as a star basketball player, you go to college, you're a star player, you have a professional career, and then it ends. You look back, and there are things that are missed along the way, and it's at no fault to the player. Some players are able to bring it all together, but when you're that focused on your sport and your craft and being that much of a professional, you got to understand the percentage of players that go pro is extremely small. And so it takes so much work and focus that there are things that along the way that aren't picked up that we want to make sure that we go back and we figure those things out, whether it be job skills, interview skills, investing advice, things of that nature. We want to make sure that the players come out as whole individuals and not just former athletes who are trying to find their way.
I think this is a perfect segue, Scott, for you to talk a little bit about the recent news that you guys just put out, the partnership that you guys have with AthLife, which in many respects I think goes a little bit into what you're talking about. This is a service and a partnership that's helping to expand access for professional development, career development, and education services. So talk a little bit about that, and why was this an important initiative to kind of clamp down, and what about AthLife really caught your eye and saying we're going to work together to help make this happen on behalf of the association?
I'll answer the last question first. The thing about Aflight that really attracted me to them, and I've been working with John Harris and his team for years now, even before I got involved with the NBRPA. I knew of them through the work I did in the NFLPA, but they're industry leaders. They are trusted by every entity in the industry. They're doing great work. They're trusted by players, by teams. And so when you talk about working with professional athletes and getting that athlete's trust, having that type of entity is really, really important. And so that was first things first. They do really good work. They've earned their reputation, and we wanted to take what we've been doing over the years and actually put it to paper and formalize it so that we're able to do the best work we can for our players. Now, one of the best things about the current situation we have with AthLife is that they're working with active players and retired players. And so their work with the NBA and their player development department provides a seamless transition so that everyone who's getting the education for AthLife when they're playing currently comes over to us, and it's still the same program, the same people they're working with. That smooth transition, that familiarity is there, and we're able to get results. We've gotten great results for players thus far. When there's a job opening and we have multiple players who are looking for opportunities, we put them through AthLife. They do the resume development, they do the interview prep, they do all those things in a way that we trust it's going to give them good results. And again, they've been really strong thus far. So, those are the type of programs we have to look for the players and make sure that all parties are really comfortable. And, moving forward, we're looking forward to all the things we can do with AthLife. But there are other things we're doing as well. We're going to be launching a program with NASA soon where, players will be able to use their entrepreneurial skills and utilize NASA technology in their businesses. That's
Wow.
tremendous. That across the
Absolutely.
board, we're talking about younger guys now who are tech savvy, who want to get involved in investing and different things like that. That's a really good fit. Now, would this have worked for players who are 65 and 70 years old? Maybe not. But we're bringing things into our repertoire here so that we're able to have a well-rounded offering to all players.
Shaw, before you ask your question, I actually want to follow up on something because you bring up a very interesting point because this is the modern day athlete.
That's
LeBron
right.
James has kind of set the stage for us to look at guys like the Steph Currys, the Kevin Durant's, the Andre Iguodala's, to look at the way that they are having an influence where sports and millennial is like now being fused
Right.
together. Um, how do you have your opportunities such as this particular program where you can maybe help bridge some gaps for the older generation? I get it. We can't obviously convince all of the 65 and over type dudes, but do they kind of get a premise of, of interest because they're seeing the progressive movements the younger athletes are doing through the programs that your association is partnering and making affiliations with?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The NASA program came to us from one of our members who is of that age range in the 55 to 65. He's a an engineer at NASA. So this isn't something that goes completely over their heads. I think that when players like LeBron and Steph and Andre get involved in these type of things, everyone's paying attention. That's the difference in 2018. Everyone is paying attention to what players are doing. Everyone is tuned into everything off the court, whether it be activism, investing, TV production. All eyes are on the basketball world, and so I think it does have a mass appeal, especially with players. Older guys are getting involved in it. Ralph Sampson is recently invested in some tech industries, and it's not just for the younger guys, but the important thing is that when we're attracting the younger players, we need to be current in what's actually happening there. It doesn't mean that we're walking away from the older players because they're getting involved as well. But we need to make sure that when we approach someone who's in their 30s, we're not offering them AARP memberships and different things like that. Again, with a very large membership, you got to understand anyone who's played at least one game in the NBA, that creates a very vast universe of former players, and so it's up to us to make sure that we're offering everything we can.
Well, shouts to AARP, I mean, with no shade for them at all. But I think it's real cool that you guys are doing the amazing things that you're doing and in the fashion that you're doing. We had Spencer Dinwiddie on our show not too long ago, and obviously he's a younger player, and he's talking about creating his own shoe and venture capitalism and investment into real estate and things of that nature. And this is what these young guys are at. Jaylen Brown, another young guy who's very, very rooted in kind of what's going on for the future and is very vested in what he's going to do his post-basketball career.
Right.
with that said, I have, I'm kind of asking you a shady question here, Scott, and you'll have to forgive me. What do you think the role is of agents once a player has retired? Because if you're here now, your association, your organization is here to kind of help pick up some of the pieces and maybe give some of these guys some of those finer tools and those soft skills that they need to continue on past their playing careers. Where's the agent in this? And sometimes, because is it really true where these agents, all right, well, you're done, and now they wash their hands of it? Are you seeing that a lot with some of the players that you're dealing with?
No one agency is the same, and there are different levels to it. What I don't like about the assumption is that every player has an agent, and then there's nothing else in their universe of support. There are a lot of your average player has a lot of different people working with them. Your business manager, you have a player agent, and let's not forget the player agent's role is to negotiate a playing contract. If you have a player agent who's attempting to run business management and off the court and financial things, you're probably not doing it right. Well, I tell you're not doing it right because you need to have someone who specializes in every industry that you need. You need an accountant, you need a lawyer, you need a financial advisor, you need an agent, you need a business manager. And so the agents get a bad rap because when things go wrong with the player, everyone says, "Oh, the agent didn't set them up properly," and that's just not true. The agent's job is to make sure the player has employment when they're playing. It's up to the player to make sure they're surrounded by the proper ecosphere of professionals. So, with all that said, we like to work with players who understand that once they're done playing, they need to reevaluate their circle. And we try to match players up with the proper people who will help them once they're done playing. Is an agent going to give you the same attention when you're not playing? Probably not, because they can't generate the same revenue. Now, if it's a superstar, sure thing. The agent will probably stick around for the marketing purposes. But their players that have a player agent for their playing contract, then they have a marketing agent. And so, we use the term agent very generically, but we need to kind of do a deeper dive into what that role is. Now, business managers, accountants, lawyers, those are the people who really need to have the scrutiny when it comes to players walking away from the game and being prepared. Because those are the people who should be thinking about not just the next year, but the next 10 to 15 years for the rest of the player's life. So, I don't want to shade my agent friends too much because I think that as a whole, agents do a good job, especially if you look at the money that's being made in the NBA right now. You're not hearing about players being broke, but you are hearing about players losing money, not from agents, but from financial advisors, the people who are being trusted to manage that money.
Scott Rochelle
Great.
joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. I think we just had a Jerry Maguire moment.
Yeah, no, I mean that was great education. I think for anybody.
The only thing we waiting for right now is Kuba just flipping up the radio and say, "Scott, show me the money." And listen.
But hold on. The funny thing about that though, because when he was talking, I was even kind of picturing some of that thing. Because what you realize, there's a part in that movie is where it's like, why don't we have a relationship like that? And when Jerry and Kuba are hugging it out and things of that nature, yeah. Right? And it's really funny and poignant. But you're right, like that's their job. Kind of is, I won't say singularly lensed, but it is kind of, hey, you're a player, so this is what we need to kind of get it done. And I do feel like, again, the education that you just gave us and our listeners out there is that the word agent really is tremendously overused. So they don't need to get the bad rap. And again, and not everyone is good, but not everyone is bad either. So again, we're definitely thank you for that, Scott, because I think that was great insight.
Well, listen, you are a recovering you're a recovering sports agent, right? So it's every now and again you can confess. It's completely fine. Like we're good with that.
No, yeah, I'm a recovering sports agent. Agency was something I wanted to get into when I was in high school, and everyone wants to be Jerry Maguire or the big time agent, and then you get into it and you get your teeth kicked in a few times, and you say, I don't want to be an agent anymore. One of the best days of my career is when I landed at the association as a client, because that meant you got a monthly retainer and you're not chasing athletes around. But no, I have respect for the agent world because everyone expects the agent to be this all-encompassing service and babysitting the guy. And again, for a professional athlete to be doing things the right way and have his or her business in order, it takes a team. It really does, and the agent plays that one role. You don't want your lighting in your house fixed by your plumber. It's just to put it simply, I want my investment person to be solely investments. I want my accountant to be solely accounting. I want my lawyer to be the person who's just handling the legal stuff. And then what that team has to communicate with amongst each other, make sure the player's okay. When we get the players and they're not okay, that more times than not, we found out that there was a lack of communication between the ecosystem and or someone just didn't do the right job. But no, I do support agents in that role because what I see now is a lot of agents doing a lot of good work for players.
Scott Rochelle joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. So Scott, there's a couple of points I hope that we can get into. One
Yeah.
of which is really just sticking out in the four corner of my mind is the association's view, you know, overshadowing what we see right now in the current climate, of the NBA. And so my question to you is how much involvement do you guys, how much you know, how much input do you guys have at the table when it comes to the current NBA, when it comes to the National Basketball Players Association? Obviously, the work that you do, the work that Michelle Roberts does, that Chris Paul does, for the current players and stuff. How much input do you and your association have? And how important is it maybe to Adam Silver into including this association's ability to do the things that you guys have been doing since you've been taking over?
Yeah, the NBA and the NBPA have been tremendous partners. The NBA provides funding to us through our licensing agreement, and through that we have opportunities for players. No doubt about that. But it goes a step further than that. When we talk about what does the NBRPA do, and you ask me, and say I'm the president CEO, but the association is represented by the players, and so when you look at the ownership growth of Grant Hill, Shaq, and other players having ownership stake. That's how we influence the industry. When you look at Turner Sports and NBA TV and all the different talent there who are representing the NBA, the NBA as well as the NBRPA every day, that's how we have an impact. Our voice is
I was
heard.
just about to ask you about that. You had thrown up
Yeah.
a couple of interesting tweets where the Sports Business Journal had given an estimation that ownership growth for the NBA is expected to increase by 2028. And I think one of the things that I was going to get your perspective on is, how does that help in as far as influencing players' understanding about why the game of basketball is important to black athletes? Like the NFL doesn't do this. And Major League Baseball doesn't do this, right? Hockey doesn't do this. Maybe even football doesn't do this, where black athletes who have given so much to the sport, this is really the only platform that they may have, where at the end of it, they may see themselves with a possibility or with a vision of some kind of ownership to help guide the game that they have invested. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into getting something, giving something, and getting something back from it at the end of it if they choose to.
Yeah, no, there are two things that jump out, right? First and foremost, the NBA has an air of inclusivity when it comes to social justice issues, the differences between people, and the diversity. It's embraced. It really is. It's celebrated. And the second thing to discuss here is the player's voice. We have a union that's led by superstars. For the first time ever, the superstars are running the union, so that when they speak, it's not just a couple of guys who are locker room leaders, but journeymen on the court. No, these are the best players on the court any given night. LeBron James, Chris Paul, Steph Curry. That changes everything. And with those guys, when they want to lead, the NBA allows them to do that. The NBA allows them to have a voice, to speak their mind. And because there's open dialogue between the league and the top players, there isn't that friction that you see in other leagues. There isn't that lack of trust, and so that's carried a very, very long way. And from our perspective as a retired players association, we love to see it because those active players, those stars right now, are supporting what we do. They're supporting retired players. They're putting millions of dollars into health insurance for retired players for life. Those kind of things, that's a game changer for us, no doubt. But it also helps us to remain relevant and puts us at the forefront of what everyone's doing. When we do the global games in China, and 5 or 6 former players are there front and center, and we're getting off the bus, and the active players have their crowds and everything, but people are in the crowd with the Sam Perkins and the Kimbe Mutombo jerseys, and they're losing their minds over those guys as well. That means something to us. That means that the NBA is embracing the value, and giving guys the ability to continue on in the NBA family just as they were when they were playing.
So that leads me into maybe a kind of a two-parter here, and we'll touch on them, kind of quickly. With that said, we do have the big three right now, right? And so you're
Yeah.
going to have some of your guys going into that. How are you guys, in essence, supporting that league now, which is kind of an offshoot at some point? And there's a lot of conversation. I'm sure you're hearing some of the rumblings, or Cube might be making a long play here with the big three to maybe try to sell this back, to the NBA at some point, since he has so many NBA guys vested in it. How are you supporting that league right now? And then I also kind of want to know, what goes into the chapter formation, in terms of figuring out where the NBRPA will have offices kind of around the country.
The big three is tremendous, and our relationship is with the NBA. They're our partner, but the big three's makeup is made up of 65-75% of our members. You've got two of our board members, three of our board members. Well, two board members are coaching. Jerome Williams is a board member. He's playing. And you've got a slew of other active members of ours involved in that. So do we support it? Of course we support it. We want to see them have fun, first of all, because they're having a lot of fun, but continue to play the game they love, continue to earn revenue opportunities, and stay in the spotlight. Officially, again, our partner is the NBA, but we're a players association, so we support the players in anything they do.
And then again, the chapters. How do you go? What goes about going into that? How do you decide which cities are going to have them? Obviously, some of the big name cities have them, but is there talks about expansion potentially for even more chapters, maybe in more rural areas, so to speak?
Yeah, we've learned that most of our members are in the Texas, they're basically from Texas all the way over to Florida. And so we have 12 chapters across the country, but to really have vibrant chapters, we're really based in the Southeast, where the weather is nice, and players have originated. And,
Hey.
and so, when you look at the growth of the chapter program, you have to have cities where there's a critical mass of former players. But right now we're in 11 NBA cities, and then the 12th being Las Vegas, is where the NBA has a large concentration of activity during the summer. The G League showcase is coming up in December in Las Vegas because of the MGM relationship. So we want to make sure the chapters are where the NBA activity is. And so that's basically the the goal in developing one of our chapters and growing them. The most recent chapter we've established is Cleveland. Obviously, Cleveland had a bump when LeBron was there, but there are quite a few players in the Ohio region. When we have a chapter meeting in Cleveland, they're coming as far from Columbus, Cincinnati, and they're supporting it there. So as long as that energy is there, we're going to have a chapter.
Makes a lot of sense to me, Scott. It makes a lot of sense. Final two questions before that you get up out of here, man. We thank you so much for the time, man. This is amazing, amazing content for everybody involved here. When it comes to partners, right? We've talked about the NBA a lot, but what is the role of the WNBA? A lot of controversy kind of going on with them opting out of their collective bargaining agreement and things of that nature from the current player side. But what is the membership drive when it comes to former retired female players?
So we added the WNBA about 5 or 6 years ago when I first got involved, and the growth was slow going because we had to establish that trust I referred to earlier. Who are we? Why are we looking to help? What are we looking to offer there? But since then, we've had a critical mass of former players, and the legends have gotten involved. Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie. Nancy Lieberman is on our board. She's doing a tremendous job in leading there. When we have that kind of buy-in, it gets a lot easier. And so we've been really growing that area, not just because we want to have them in the membership, but they're seeing exactly how they can utilize our programs to better themselves. Adrienne Goodson is a godsend for us because every program we throw at her, she does it. She just finished an MBA program through Purdue Global through a partnership we have with the university. We have 2 more women who are going to finish their MBAs in the next year. Everything we have to offer, the WNBA players are jumping all over it because they're just that savvy. So it really is a great partnership for us to have with the W. Unfortunately, they are going to have some tough conversations in the near future, but we keep talking about the salaries, and granted, the women want to get paid, and everyone deserves to have their fair pay. So I'm not going to fault anybody for asking for that. But from our standpoint, we want to see some different things similar to what the men got in their last CBA, mainly healthcare.
Right.
It's not going to cost a whole bunch of money to provide healthcare for these women. And when I say the women, I say the current and former players. Things like that. Those are things that we need to make sure are in the discussion for the CBA moving forward, because again, it's a doable cost in my opinion, but it's also very important to be able to provide that because these women have played basketball their entire lives. They're going to have the knee injuries, the same type of injuries the men have, and if it's worthwhile to provide that kind of care to the men, we should do it for the women as well.
I think that's extremely well said, Scott. So before we let you get out of here, we're going to end on a positive note with all the great programs and all the great things that are going on.
This wasn't positive enough.
Oh, no doubt. But we want to send them out on a super high.
Oh,
you know
okay.
what I mean? With those good vibes in tow.
Oh, okay.
What is your absolute favorite program or event that's put on by your organization? What's the one thing you look forward to? I can't wait for that to take place each year.
Wow. So you know what, we do 25 youth clinics across the country, and up until last year I administered them, and I was traveling the country doing those. I can't in good faith say that there's anything better than running those camps. But I will say that next week we're doing a players party in DC at the MGM National Harbor. And it's simply a way for all the players to come back in, have a good time, enjoy each other, and really have that locker room feel. So I'm really looking forward to that. We have about 30 players, 8 Hall of Famers signed up coming out to hang out with us. And so anytime we get the players together in that fashion, I take a step back and let them have each other, talk, and reminisce. It's a magical thing. So that's what I'm looking more forward to right now.
Well, it sounds like you're definitely showing love. You're spreading love, especially out there in the DC area, because the Washington Wizards is just miserable right about now. So they need a little bit of positivity going on out there, man. I think it'll be
I thought we ended on a positive note.
It is positive for people in DC. If they don't want to see bad basketball, they can see some legendary players and some high-profile celebs and Scott Rochelle, and and the association putting it down just in case things just don't look right out there. You know what I'm saying? Until they get
shout out to the Wizards Alumni Association. They're hosting us as well.
Exactly.
Oh, I like that. See my man Scott always on the political correctness.
Always.
That's what's up.
A recovering sports podcaster. I understand. I get it. Oh my gosh. Scott, man, we so appreciate you hopping on board with us this week and really breaking it down. The association is just doing some absolutely wonderful work. I feel like we're the fortunate ones to have had an opportunity to sit down and rap with you about the wonderful work that you're helping set the table for, the wonderful work that the legendary players have been doing, the retired players from all walks of the NBA, not NBA, but just basketball culture in itself, man. And we just continue to look forward to you guys doing bigger and better.
Yeah, thank you so much. We love the support. We want to do great things for the players, and with your support, we can do so. So thank you so much.
All right. What a show, man. Scott Rochelle, Jimmy Buckets on the move. I mean, I tell you, man, we're not supposed to put both of those names in at the same time, but you know what? This is the NBA, and that's just how it goes, brother.
Hey, it is what it is. And then at least I think for Minnesota and Philadelphia, they both get something that they wanted to do. We got a great topic to discuss as a result of it, and complimenting the fact that we had the amazing Scott Rochelle, on our podcast. What an insightful dude with so much just extension into the NBA community and some great knowledge he provided to our fans and listeners, bro.
Most definitely. So once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for tuning in to us for the Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw. Special shout outs to our man, Scott Rochelle. And we'll catch up with you next time.